been described as the best Black-run society. We'll talk about the island of Barbados with Ambassador Noah Lynch. Up next on Carib Nation. Hello, welcome to Carib Nation. I'm Doris Dean. The tiny island of Barbados in the Caribbean region is one of the smallest on the planet. Before Rihanna, some people thought it was a part of Jamaica. Today, the bold, brilliant Prime Minister, the Honorable Mia Amor Motley, has catapulted Barbados to the position of leader in international boardrooms and global summits. It has been described as the best Black-run society. Today, we'll talk about that with His Excellency Noah Lynch, Ambassador of Barbados to the United States and Permanent Representative to the Organization of American States. Thank you very much for joining me, Ambassador Lynch, and welcome to Carib Nation. And it is my pleasure to talk to you today about Barbados. I know you enjoy talking about Barbados. And what prompted this interview is a comment that you made that you have been told that Barbados is considered one of the best Black-run societies. A number of people have raised some questions about that. Some people feel great pride and others some skepticism. So I wanted you to help us understand, what is it that's so special about Barbados that puts them in this category? What are the best practices that you think Barbados has put in place that maybe some of the other smaller islands can learn from?
Well. First of all, thanks for having me on to be able to discuss something as I think as important as this, and something that is as dear to my heart as this particular subject and topic. Now, let me put in my disclaimer, though, spoiler alert at the beginning, is that I am not the original author of the comment of Barbados being one of the best run Black societies in the world. That came from, I've heard two people mention this, or at least make reference to this. One is some years ago when I worked in Barbados at CBC, at the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation. We engaged a professor and a broadcaster. His name was Listervelt Middleton from, I believe, from North Carolina. I believe he's passed on since then. And he was the one, he came to Barbados. He used to do a program, which was a syndicated program for Blacks. And he came to Barbados because CBC used to air this program on Sunday afternoons, I believe. And he came and he said, Dr. Middleton said that when he actually came to Barbados, visited Barbados, and saw Barbados at work, his reference was that Barbados was one of the best run Black societies in the world. That was the first reference that he made to it. And then some years afterwards, the existing Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Honorable Ralph Gonzalez, he also made reference to the fact that the exceptionalism of Barbados, and Barbados is a small Black society, and that it was, he thought, that Barbados, or he mentioned again that Barbados was one of these best run Black societies. So this is not an original thought. When I heard this, when I was speaking at that gathering, at that event in Atlanta, I was just making reference to what had been said before. And this was seeking to encourage investors and potential investors to get interested in Barbados. And I thought that that was a good way to lead off the discussion about what these two gentlemen have said and other people have said. You also know that Kofi Annan, when he was the Secretary General of the UN, he made reference to the fact that Barbados was a country that punched way above its weight. he didn't put it in the same, he didn't coin it in the same way to say that it was one of the best run black societies. But that's the inference that I drew and other people drew from the statement that he made. Now, let me, in terms of practices and what leads us into that direction is we boast about the literacy of our people. We boast all the time. Whenever I tell anyone in the United States that Barbados has um, over 95% of our people finish high school in the US context about finishing high school, people are always alarmed and amazed at that because we even if it's the school leaving certificate, if it's the CXC or the O level system that we had in the past, um, our people graduate high school. They go through a high school program, a high school curriculum that most of them um, are good at or adept at or are successful in. And I believe that when the right excellent Errol Barrow made the point that education was really the basis on which we should construct a society and construct a living, that he was correct, and it is what has propelled Barbados to being what it is. If you look at the Human Development Index of the United Nations and you look at where Barbados is positioned in that Human Development Index on all of the indices, all of the variables that make up the index, Barbados is very high on the ratings. And we have done that against the backdrop of being very small in terms of our land space, in being very limited in terms of our financial and economic resources. And therefore, um, if you take that into consideration, by and large, Barbados should not have achieved what it has achieved given where we started. But I believe that a number of things have worked in our favor. Our educational system, the fact that we've had good political and stable political leadership, the fact that we've utilized the economic resources that we've had in a very sensible way, and the fact that at the end of the day, there's a pride about Barbados. There's pride in industry is really our motto that's attached to the coat of arms is right behind my head, and that pride in industry. But Barbadians feeling proud about who they are. And I will say one other thing finally. Um, a country that has thrown our size, that has thrown up and to the world the right excellent Sir Garfield Sobers, who is um, world renowned as even today as the greatest cricketer ever born, the best to ever play this game, is incredible. And in more recent time, what the right excellent Rihanna Robin Fenty has done for Barbados kind of gives credence to what we're talking about. That this is not that other countries haven't thrown up good people as well or small countries, but the name of Rihanna and Sir Garfield are prominent names globally. You mention their names in capitals, and people know exactly who you're talking about. And in recent time, the outstanding um, actions that our Prime Minister, Mayor Amor Motley, has taken, has made to put us more prominently on the map also counts for that as well.
Yes, it's fair to say that if you look back over time, Barbados was known by Garfield Sobers. Um, when you mention that name, there, well, even for the West Indies generally.
Yeah.
And we moved forward a little bit, and Barbados got known a little bit better by Rihanna. And now we have a prime minister who has expanded that even further.
Mhm.
There are people who didn't even know where Barbados was who know who Mia Motley is.
Mhm.
Talk about the leadership using the pillars. When you mix that you put that combination of leadership with the pillars that you pointed out: education, stability of government. Talk about the power of leadership in that context.
Well, I'll say this. I think we've been blessed with good leaders. I don't want to draw a distinction between um, political leaders on either side of our political aisle, because at the end of the day, there's no great distinction between um, the Democratic Labour Party and the Barbados Labour Party, the two most prominent parties, as it relates to political philosophy. What may be different is maybe some economic or social practices, but by and large, we are socially democratic parties being driven by the same ideals, and so there's no political separation between us in that regard. I will say to you that the leaders going back from as far as Mr. Barrow. Interestingly enough, when there was a federation, a political federation, a United States of the Caribbean, so to speak, the first premier, the first prime minister of the union was from Barbados, Sir Grantley Adams. So it tells you that Barbados has not now begun to show that level of leadership that the rest of the Caribbean looks to or endorses. But I can tell you, I've been in heads of government meetings with um, Owen Arthur, with Owen Arthur, when he was prime minister, and how the rest of the region looked to him for his leadership. Um, Barrow was supposed to have had that same mantle, so to speak, and now Mia Motley has inherited that mantle, and she is taking it to even greater heights than just uh, within the confines of CARICOM or the Caribbean. Mia Motley is known. If I say here I'm from Barbados, in this capital of the United States, people make reference to Mia Motley and to Rihanna, and they know exactly what you're talking about. So, but in the area of political leadership, what Motley has done is shown that size doesn't really matter in this regard. She speaks truth to power. She understands our limitations in terms of our geography and size and the geopolitics of the world. But at the same time, she makes it abundantly clear that we are small countries contribute as well to the development of the world and to the global economy and everything else that's in it. And she makes the point that we are not we're not dispensable. We're not you shouldn't just look to throw us out. What we need to we contribute from where we sit a lot to the development of the world. And also she makes the point that the world, the way in which it is put together now, that if you don't pay attention to small jurisdictions, how small jurisdictions live and develop and assist, then the downsides of their development is going to end up on your doorstep, even if you're a large developed state. So Motley is speaking truth to power. Motley is telling people, listen, that and that's what globalization has been about. Now, a world that was driven a lot by globalization before is now driven a lot by geopolitical risk. And therefore, you've got to understand your place in the world, your place and space in the world. And even big countries need to pay attention to small countries because if not, they have the power in many instances to seek to derail many aspects of your own developed country existence. And Motley has been able to say that. Motley has been doing that, saying that, making it clear to people that what is important. And also, she's done one other thing. She's drawn global attention to environmental issues that we may have taken for granted and raised them to a level of importance that developed countries pay more careful attention to them. On the issue of climate and what she's doing for climate finance, the one country in this hemisphere that gets hit by a hurricane every year is the United States, whether it's in the Gulf, whether it's Florida, whether it's up the eastern seaboard. We think the hurricanes are confined to the Caribbean and the Bahamas and Barbados and Antigua and Barbuda and St. Kitts and Dominica. But every year in the United States, there is a hurricane that passes through. So what do we say? That you've got to be the resources necessary for issues of adaptation and mitigation against climate change. The issues of how climate interacts with your everyday existence, global warming, sea level rises. Motley is bringing that to attention. The resources that we have estimated that we would have needed for those actions has been woefully underestimated. We said this at COP. Studies have been done that come out of COP 26 and 27 to prove that it is so. And therefore, pay more careful attention to this because climate is multidimensional. What it does is not just about even about just global warming, sea level rises, whatever else it is. There are aspects, there's security aspects of climate. There are immigration aspects and migration aspects of climate. And Motley is raising the temperature, no pun intended, on the issues that as they relate to climate. And she's telling the rest of the world that not only should you be paying more careful attention to this, but more resources must be garnered to be able to deal with some of the issues that we have that are a result of climate change. And I think that that in itself says a lot. And she is the preeminent, I am bold to say that she's the preeminent leader, global leader in this regard. And to be able to, uh, if you had told me 20 years ago that a small developing country like Barbados and a female leader could get a developed country leader to host a summit and 50 world leaders would have turned up, I would have told you that you're not really thinking right. But that is what happened in Paris a couple of weeks ago. And it tells you something about the prominence that she has.
Yeah. It's interesting. 50 years ago, Robert McNamara said something that you just said, and that is if the large countries in the World Bank and the IMF do not pay attention to the small countries and seek to improve the lives of the people of those small countries, over time, those people will be on your doorstep. I think those were his exact words.
I didn't even
And
know you said that.
and to think that that has come to pass, to hear you say that, it rang very true to me because I remember hearing that statement several years ago at the World Bank in one of the World Bank annual meetings. And so, following that, when you consider that the late Lloyd Erskine Sandiford, who recently passed, one of his concerns back in the 80s was about environment, but nobody paid attention. And so, as you say, nobody thought that somebody from a small country would have any impact on the major countries. I just saw a report yesterday that the coral in Florida, which is sort of the seawall of Florida, the coral reefs are being bleached. And that is a major concern that Florida has to be concerned about, in addition to hurricanes. I did a program with someone from NOAA several years ago who warned about that, having looked at some of the coral reefs across the Caribbean, and warned that we were heading towards serious coral bleaching, which would create a problem for the Caribbean and southern. So I guess people have not been paying attention, or they have decided that they will kick the can down the road, and now the chickens are coming home to roost. And I think it takes, as they say, it'll probably take a woman to bring them to bring it to their attention.
It has
But
happened.
she is doing a tremendous job. Now there are people who are questioning, as they say, Mia Mottley is doing a tremendous job internationally. How are the people in Barbados affected? How are they seeing the impact of Mia Mottley? What is their life like on a daily basis? And there's some people who are concerned that cost of living is extremely high. Of course, there's a high standard of living, but cost of living is very high, and there are many people who have no jobs and people who are suffering. How is the structure or the strategy to handle that working?
Mhm. First of all, let me just say that when you think about Barbados, a small developing country with an open economy that is dependent on the exterior for most of the goods that we consume in Barbados, you understand that the only two ways that you can actually um, earn a living or earn the foreign currency that buys those goods is by either one, earning it by someone bringing it to you, or someone or exporting something out. In our case, people bring it to us mostly because of tourism. 90% of the foreign exchange that comes into Barbados comes into the tourism sector. The other smaller amount comes into the international business sector. The second thing that people have got to realize is that if you don't earn it, you've got to borrow it. One of the more important things about, and this is economics 101 is explained to me when I did take my first course in economics, is this. If your growth rate, if your economic growth rate exceeds the amount that you're paying, and this is a simplistic way, this is not the only formula, exceeds the interest rates that you're paying on the loans that you've got, and whether those loans are either domestic or foreign loans, then you are making progress. And this is what we do. We borrow money to be able to build productive capacity for the future. In other words, if you balance your budget, then after that, what you're getting into on the current account, you're getting into is how do you borrow them to be able to build productive capacity for the future? And you can take it down to the way in which people finance a household. I mean, I'm making it simplistic, but this is the basis of it, and any economist will tell you that. Any trained economist worth his or her salt will tell you that. Now, I believe that in the case of Prime Minister Motley, I think that the effort to go first to the International Monetary Fund when she assumed office was a brilliant move, because at the time, not only were we fighting uh, for to be able to garner the foreign exchange that we needed, but we had a poor credit rating. Our credit rating was poor, and that is what determines in great measure your interest rates when you borrow money. As I see, you got to borrow, and then the second thing is that it also created for us the pool of funds that we needed initially to be able to deal with some of the priorities that we had at the time. So that was well done. Now, going forward, remember we started to see our debt fall. We started to see our unemployment rate fall as well. And then came COVID. I'm of the belief that had it not been for COVID, that we would have been in a much better position. But when Motley inherited the government, we were the third highest indebted country in the entire world. We had our debt to GDP ratio was over 200%. And it started then to fall because one, we could cushion what we were doing with the immediate transfers that we got from the International Monetary Fund. But then there's a lot of restructuring that had to be done within the economy. And that started to work well. But then COVID came, and these are expenses that you would never have bargained for, that came about. And then the climate crisis came. And that's why Motley's all over the world doing what she's doing. I must tell you that in terms of climate finances, I must tell you that I don't believe that our story or her story or our story in terms of government has been told well enough, because I don't think that people understand in great measure what what we're seeking to do. The globe, because you've got to marry the global prominence and what is gained from the global prominence and the actual resources with people's everyday living. But I will say this, uh, things are expensive in Barbados. They're expensive everywhere. I've seen we are importing from the United States primarily. And if you walk into a supermarket, and I'm sure you've experienced this in the last year or so, you would have seen that prices have gone up. And therefore, if there's inflation here, we import inflation into Barbados and into the Caribbean. So what are you going to expect in that regard? But in the midst of all of this, I think Motley and her team have handled the the economy that well that we have seen unemployment rates have fallen. I mean, we our unemployment rates have been the lowest it has been in almost a decade that as they exist today. and amongst men it has fallen. It's not perfect. Barbados is not. Barbados, I think we're still somewhere in the region about 7% of 5.7%, 6%, something like that. I don't know the exact figure. I don't have the exact figure in front of me. But our unemployment rates are falling, and therefore it tells you that the economy itself is improving. Now, obviously, to put out a global figure, I mean, global for Barbados is for a man or woman who doesn't have a job or who is struggling, it doesn't really mean a lot. It doesn't really mean anything. But by and large, when you look at what has been happening to the economy and the strength of the economy, the growth of the economy, when you look at what has been happening in the bounce back of the tourism sector, what we had to spend in climate and COVID, and now even post COVID financing, Barbados is doing well, is doing very well. It's not perfect. I repeat, it's not perfect. But I think a lot has been done under the Motley administration. New buses have been bought. Um, 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 roads have improved. Garbage collection and trucks with garbage collection have been bought for the first time in over a decade. Buses, the electronic buses that we've got, they've improved the transport system. Been done. We've built um, a new accident and emergency wing of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. You know, schools have been repaired and revamped. As I said, um, there's a lot that's been done in infrastructure. The whole town project, for example, roadways have been improved substantially, particularly in country areas that never had these improvements. There's a housing program that has started that is being able to give houses to those people who fall into that lower middle income area, teachers and nurses and policemen who don't can't necessarily easily get a mortgage. Things have been improved. There's things have improved substantially, and therefore, one of the things that I am critical of, even me, is that I don't think the story is being told well enough and often enough. And I believe if we were able to do that, Barbados would see. But I learned under another prime minister that politics is the art of repetition, and one of the aspects of it, a major aspect of it. And to say something once doesn't mean that people are going to buy into it. But what we have done in terms of food security, what we've done of improving of employment, for example, those things are things that have been gained from what we have been able to do with the IMF and improving our economy. What we are doing with the climate financing and everything is to ensuring that we do have a Barbados in this existential threat of climate change, that we do have a Barbados in the future, and Motley is doing that effectively. Whether or not Barbadians are buying into it as well as they should is another issue. But I believe that she's done a great job. The government has done a really good job, and that you will see that it will improve.
So I suppose one of the important things to take from this is that we have to do a better job of telling Barbadians as well.
That's why we're doing what we're doing now today.
Exactly. That's my point. I also wonder whether the loan structure that is in place with the IMF, some people are concerned that that may not be sustainable. And that is something that bothers some people in terms of what will happen with the cost of living with regard to the borrowing structure. I'm aware that there are a number of uh, pillars being put in place along the way, which will probably come to fruition later down the line, and we will see the results of those as far as financing and in IMF and the World Bank are concerned. But how do we translate this to the average Barbadian?
I'm not. I don't buy that Barbados has been able to be. I don't buy that what we have is not sustainable. I'm saying, what is the alternative to the borrowings that we're doing now? What is the alternative? I guess you could say you could earn your way out of what we're into. and that is a fact. But you just don't start by earning. You've got to be able to have the structures and infrastructure in place to be able to earn. And therefore, what are we doing to be able to improve that? And I think the mechanism, the systems that we set up. Look, Barbados paid almost twice as much um, in the first quarter of this year for energy as it paid the year before. So it tells you something about where Barbados, and and once energy costs increase, and this is energy costs increase because of increased a lot because of this conflict in the Ukraine and in Eastern Europe. So you got to be very clear that there are a lot of things that Barbados itself and the prime minister cannot herself control, and the government cannot herself control. But I will tell you um, that Barbados has done a fantastic job in terms of being able to garner the resources necessary to deal with not only setting ourselves for our living, but for going forward. We've done a brilliant job. I don't know how else I can explain it. As I said, I don't think our story has been told that well, but it has been done.
Now
But we
there's also a proposal for universal income, minimum income, um, for people in Barbados at a certain income level.
yes, but
Which,
there's a sorry. Go ahead.
well, there's been a question as to whether that is feeding into the concept, into the idea that people will probably do what they do in this country with Social Security, or not want to put the effort into earning as much as they are working to the level that they should if they have a guaranteed income. And I've,
I'm not. Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
I've heard the comment that this is encouraging laziness, which may
I
come
I
back to
don't buy
bite.
I don't buy that. I mean, if you look at those who have read um, substantially on the issue of the welfare state, will tell you that the welfare state in itself does not create laziness. Even, and this is not a welfare issue. I'm just saying that people, because to people who slip through the cracks, and you give them a business for their living and a platform for their living, um, put that back into the society. I mean, this is well known. This is not, I'm not making this up. This is a principle that's well known, and anybody who wants to read about it can go up and read about it. And you will see that what you will find is that Barbados, yes, I don't have any problem with a with a minimum. But we have a minimum wage already, but a guaranteed income, because that is going to be fed back into the society. It's going to keep us stable. It's going to be able to continue to move us in the right direction. It's going to continue to create a platform for many people to have a way up in the world. I don't buy it. I don't buy the downside of what people are proposing that this will be, that this will cause. I mean, a lot of people talked about remember, when we introduced the minimum wage, a lot of people commented and were relatively critical about the minimum wage proposal, because people even said that, if you are my handyman, or you come around to cut my grass or whatever, and the government demands that I give you $7 an hour, $8 an hour, $10 an hour, whatever it is, and you are not going to. Why am I going to do that? Right? You can't tell me how much to pay the man that's coming around to cut my grass or whatever, particular self-employed person. I'd rather cut my grass myself. That again is a myth. That hasn't proven to be so, because people have to be able to earn a basic living wage and a living standard wage, because it comes back into the wider society.
Right.
Even when we were talking about the influx of people, I don't know if you remember years ago, we were talking about the another country that people were coming into Barbados, and there were so many huge numbers of them coming into Barbados. And what happened? It was during that period that our unemployment rate went to its lowest ever. And the reason for that is, and the economists will tell you, and that was worked out, is that the people came into our society. They brought skills and services that maybe a lot of us didn't have in Barbados, but it also increased the overall pool of goods and services that were available. And then other people earned and gained from it, and other employment was created. In addition to that, you can only underpay. The people say, you underpay these people for a little while. You can only because they're shopping in the same supermarkets, they're buying the same goods and services that you're buying. So how much long you feel that you can underpay a man or a woman that comes into your society to work? Sooner or later they get wise, and you got to increase that. But one of the things that these people brought was greater skills, and skills that we were not prepared to, as you move on and you develop, that we were not, a lot of our people were not interested in agriculture, in the construction industry. And therefore, once they are there working and producing, it means that it creates a larger pool of resources that other people are able to gain from. So I don't buy that. I think that having a minimum wage and a minimum standard of living is important to Barbados.
It goes back into the society. And many of those people who came in also brought entrepreneurship with them, um,
Yes,
which was not a big thing in Barbados at the time, but has grown since then as a
of course,
result of some of those examples. And so
of course.
I can understand that. As we wrap up, I'd say the important thing that we can take from this is some of the smaller islands can pay attention to the strategies that Mia Motley has put in place. Um, and of course, a lot of that has to do with who the people are that you're leading in the first place, and how they're how they see their own leaders in their own places. But let's talk a little bit as we wrap up about what is your highlight? What is the challenge? What are the challenges and highlights as you represent Barbados in the United States?
Well, well, if I think that we've got a good program and a good direction and a good strategic planning direction to where we're going. One of the challenges that will always be um, in the face of us as Caribbean people, Caribbean countries, Caribbean representatives is one, the level of resources that we've got available to us to engage as much as we can at this level. The and that's not only just financial resources, but even personnel, human resources. The we have a plan. I think we could do a lot more in terms of getting in the face of legislators, because at the end of the day, our relationship with the United States is paramount, and that's why we're here. But we could do a lot more to get in the face of those that really make a difference. Whether it is, as Mia Motley says, restructuring the world's global financial architecture, of which the United States has great influence. I think we should be doing a lot more with them. But that calls for human resources and people to be able to get to them every day. Then there is the multilateral um, agency, that the OAS, which is important to the US, is headquartered here. And we engaged there with 5G, as I said, 5G20 countries, 2G7 countries. Are we doing enough in that multilateral theater to be able to exact more gains to Barbados? I don't think we are. I think we could do a lot more with that. But again, resources is the issue. And if I were to comment on anything that is, I believe, is a downside of this existence, it's not having all the resources available to us to be able to do more. But it has been an interesting and fruitful sojourn. I believe that we could do that. At the end of the day, like a couple of weeks ago, we passed a resolution at the OAS General Assembly that got the 35 members and the 32 active members of that body to agree to do all that they can to earn additional financing for climate and for climate change and for the effects of climate change. That was a major fillip for us. What we've been able to do a couple of years ago, we passed another resolution on climate change that brought us into the space where people listen to us. But what was even more interesting about this time of climate financing is that for the first time in the OAS, the United States and Canada co-sponsored a resolution that was brought by a small developing country to the GA. And that in itself was a major successful point for us. That has never happened before. But to get the United States and Canada on board at the same time in supporting and endorsing and co-sponsoring a resolution of that nature was itself a big plus for us. So as I said, there are downsides and upsides. We've been able to expand our diaspora database to get more Barbadians involved in seeking to assist Barbados and earning garnering funds and other resources to be able to assist Barbados in any way that they can. I think is a good. Our communication between ourselves and the diaspora has improved through the tools that we've used to do that. Could be better. It's not perfect, but that also is a plus for us. And being able to get the Caribbean Caucus of Ambassadors to work more closely together on the common issues that we have, using their convening power in multilateral fora to make a difference, that makes a difference to us. So there are successes, and we could do better if we had more people, but here we are.
Well, I think it's been, I wanted to do this so that people understand the mechanics of what's happening in the Caribbean, so to speak, and with Barbados as emerging as a leader in CARICOM, because we have heard for many years that CARICOM has done nothing. Nobody does anything in CARICOM. And I think that some people feel that only now that Mia Mottley is a part of it that we're seeing changes. We've suddenly seen the Vice President of the United States engaging. We've seen the Secretary of State engaging. And some people feel that it's all because of Barbados. There might be other reasons, but it's important for people to recognize that something is happening. And for the naysayers who believe that the first world larger countries and the multilateral, the financial institutions will not listen, are you optimistic that they will
I believe that they're listening.
and take action?
I mean,
But they're
everything
listening, but will they take action?
no, I think everything points to, I think making them aware. As you said, I didn't even know that Robert McNamara had said that if you don't help us to develop that, things may end up on your doorstep, is a fundamentally good way to put it. Because whether you want to realize it or not, it means that if you don't do as much as you can to help us, that the downsides of our underdevelopment have ways and means of impacting your own development and your own continued development. And I think that is in itself brilliant because people need to realize that that's the way it is. Uh,
Well,
you know,
that's how the world is. You help each other. That's how it's designed.
but I don't know that. I think a lot of people don't even seem to recognize how important it is. That how important it is to highlight these things on an ongoing basis. It's not going to change overnight. Barbados has a lot to be proud of. But in addition to that, we also have to continue to work at it. As I said, I will repeat, finally, I don't think our story has been told as well as it should have been told. There's a lot more that we could gain from just saying it. I mean, I don't know how much better I can say it, but Barbados there's a lot more that can be done and said. If you look at what Motley has done, how she has pressed on, and the things that she's been able to do. But I think the one thing that she's been able to do very effectively is to bring the world to realizing that small developing countries matter and that small developing countries are important in the scheme of global development. We don't just exist as a second thought about something else that we're doing. We exist because
You're
we
part of the
bring,
world.
yeah,
Yeah,
but we're not only just part, but I mean, but a substantial part that people should pay more, that the developed world should be paying more attention to. And Motley has brought that into focus in a way that a lot of people have never done before, or any other leader, I think, CARICOM leader has ever done before. I think that's important. If you take the Mexico and its relationship with the United States um, the southern border of the U.S., and you look at, for example, the drug flows that come up from Mexico and flow into the United States. It is alleged and has been said, I've heard that most of the fentanyl that comes into the U.S. comes from Mexico. No, it means that pay careful attention to your neighbors, your third border, as they dubbed us. The Nobel laureates in 2019, Duflo and Banerjee from MIT, said most of the time people don't emigrate or migrate because they always look over the fence and think that things are good on the other side. It's because the grass is greener. It's because the grass is not green enough where they are. And that is what causes them to react in the way they do. You need to be able to help us develop, because if you don't help us develop, a lot of the aspects of our underdevelopment may may appear on your doorstep and cause a retardation, cause your own progress to be retarded. That's important.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Ambassador, for talking with me about Barbados. And I think we can take from this that the factors to a well-run society are education, stable economic, stable political and economic efficiency, uh, coupled with good leadership and the boldness to talk truth to power, which I think Motley has been able to do, and bring the world to understand what its place is, as many of the larger countries have been negligent, I suppose, over the years of the small states. So it's about bringing attention to the small states. And for the people in Barbados, the stability, in spite of the hard times, in spite of the high cost of living, what they have is a stability in the society that some around them, some islands around Barbados or some other countries do not really enjoy to that extent. So thank you so much again, and thanks for joining us on Carib Nation.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us here.
Barbados, the small island punching above its weight. Thank you for watching Carib Nation, where our motto is one people, one culture, one Caribbean, one nation. Until next time, I'm Doris Dean.